can discuss it, sir. So over to you, sir, for taking this interesting topic for us.
Thanks, Poonam, for the brief introduction on today's topic. So it is a bit like offline from what we done in the last couple of months to 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years. So lots of discussion happened in terms of managing COVID, in terms of controversies in the therapeutic options, in terms of their prognostication, newer therapies, repurposed medications and all. So finally, we fed up with all those things, what happened in the last 2 years. So again, we have to move back to our regular proper critical care medicine. So one of the aspect of critical care medicine is the cardiac critical care medicine. So again, India being a main hub of cardiac comorbidities or maybe premorbid or comorbid conditions which trigger the origin of acute coronary syndrome, maybe it's diabetes or hypertension, hypercholesterolemia. So all these things together make India as one of the main hub for having this disease entity which is having a high mortality and morbidity. So we know that when it comes to cardiac or it may be stroke, so time is muscle, okay, whether it is a brain, time is brain, or the heart, time is the muscle. So if there is a delay in the therapy, when patient is in the indicated scenario, means ST segment elevated MI and all, so the each delay of the minute is going to count, which is going to be directly proportional to increase in morbidity and mortality. So with that perspective, so early reperfusion establishment, okay, so it may be like pharmacological or it is invasive procedure that is more appropriate. But the problem in Indian scenario is like early reperfusion by doing the intervention. So that is the problem. So we don't have many units capable to do the coronary intervention on early basis and timely basis, and it is the reachability of the patients. And also obviously we need to weigh all these things, availability, how far it is when it comes to management of the acute coronary syndrome. So we still have a good opportunity to save the patient with like pharmacological reperfusion agents. And also we'll try to dissect today's topic, that is the tenecteplase, in terms of evidence, in terms of acute coronary syndrome globally, what is the data available and what is the data which is available in Indian scenario also. As I already told, acute coronary syndrome is a term used to describe a range of conditions associated with sudden reduced blood flow to the heart. So most commonly, we expect the patient to manifest with some sort of chest pain, tightness of the chest, discomfort, or it may be palpitation, sweating, and all those things. Or patient might present immediately, so with a syncopal attack and all. So India has the highest burden of acute coronary syndrome, no doubt. So overview globally, we have a huge burden. The prevalence is going to be around 3 to 4% is the prevalence, not the incidence. In Indian rural scenario, it's going to be around 3 to 4%. Urban, it's going to be up to 8% prevalence we have. So when it comes to division of this acute coronary syndrome, so how it is being distributed in terms of the incidence, so we have more than 50%, that is around 51%. We have a like STEMI, which is the most common acute coronary syndrome. Next will be the proper STEMI with a raised enzymes, that's contribute around 30 to 33%. And we have unstable angina. So patient is having a chest pain, chest discomfort while on the rest. So that is unstable angina. There is no enzyme release. So that's around 15 to 16%. So this is the around 5-6 years back data, but so it is still currently also hold true. This is the division of the acute coronary syndrome which is happening in Indian scenario. So this is one more data, so which got published in Lancet in 2008. So treatment and outcome of acute coronary syndrome in India. So it's a prospective analysis of the registry data. It is not like hand-in-hand comparison like study RCT and all. So whatever the registry we maintain, so that is being analyzed. So this is the CREATE data. Okay. So prospective registry study in around 89 centers from 10 regions and 50 cities in India has been analyzed. So they enrolled about around 21,000 patients, of which 20,468 patients were given the definite diagnosis. So about 60% had a STEMI. So I told it is more than 50%, it is holds good. So around 60.6% of the patients, according to the published data from the Indian scenario, had a STEMI. So patients in India who have acute coronary syndrome have a higher rate of STEMI than do patients in the developed countries, since most of these patients were poor, so less likely to get evidence-based therapy and had greater 30-day mortality. So basically, we need to tackle this problem with the appropriate timely needed reperfusion therapy, whether it is a pharmacological or interventional reperfusion. So when it comes to a brief on the pathophysiology, so what is the culprit when we have a acute coronary syndrome patient? It is an unstable, vulnerable plaque. Okay, so when it gets disrupted, fissured, eroded, so of this atheromatous plaque, so which is going to activate hand in hand primary hemostasis, which is the activation of the platelet. Okay, so platelet activation, release reaction, aggregation, adhesion. So that we call it as a primary hemostasis activation, and which is also going to activate the secondary hemostasis with the prothrombin to thrombin, fibrinogen to fibrin. So overall, so there will be formation of the RBC entanglement on the so-called thrombus, which completely occlude the vessel to give a STEMI or NSTEMI. So this is the overview on the pathophysiology. So an unstable, vulnerable plaque is the culprit, which is going to have macrophages, lymphocytes. Okay, so there is some neovascularization which is going to happen, so which have a thin fibrous cap with a lipid core with an ongoing activation of the platelet and that of the coagulation system, so to form a well-formed thrombus finally. Okay, so we need to understand what therapy is going to act depending upon the pathophysiological basis of this thrombus formation. So just for our understanding, it is being divided into white thrombus, that is a platelet rich. Okay, so it is mainly consisting of platelet. So formation is best limited by the use of antiplatelet agents. So if you see the mortality benefit of these therapeutic approaches for acute coronary syndrome, so standalone mortalities we got from aspirin. Okay, we got from reperfusion therapies, either it's a pharmacological reperfusion therapy or it is an intervention based reperfusion therapy. So oxygen, nitrate, morphine, okay, Mona, okay, Onum, all these things not have an independent outcome benefit in terms of the mortality. So when you club together, they have a mortality benefit, but antiplatelet and reperfusion therapies are the standalone, okay, so agents which are having a very good mortality benefit. We have a trials like on aspirin, ISIS-1, ISIS-2 trial and all, which clearly showed the benefit. If you add a clopidogrel, okay, so which add again additional benefit to that of the aspirin. So we have the Clarity, Comet, okay, Point trials and all. So basically this white thrombus, that is the platelet rich thrombus, is going to get inhibited by cyclooxygenase inhibitors like aspirin, ADP receptor mediated platelet aggregation by ADP receptor inhibitors like clopidogrel, prasugrel. So these things are like ticlopidine. So these things we call it as thienopyridine group of drugs. And we have glycoprotein 2B3 inhibitor, apiximab, eptifibatide, tirofebin. In a risky patient, we used to opt this. But they have an additional risk of some sort of increase in incidence of bleeding also. So then we have a red thrombus. So basically it is the formation of the proper fibrin thrombus along with entanglement of the RBCs. So that we call it as the red thrombus. So this is the red thrombus, this is the white thrombus. Okay, so this is the unstable vulnerable plaque. So basically on this red thrombus, we are going to get all these agents like thrombolytic agents, fibrinolytic agents, whether it's the first generation, second generation thrombolytic agents, along with the anticoagulants. Okay, so you have to remember, so current thrombolytic agents lyse the fibrin, that is a red cell thrombus, but paradoxically may increase the thrombin activation. Okay, so by some sort of feedback mechanism. That's why in the initial days of acute coronary syndrome, even though you thrombolyze the patient with a fibrinolytic agent, we need to give concomitant administration of this antithrombin agents, that is the anticoagulants. So either an unfractionated heparin or maybe a low molecular weight heparin. So that's very, very important. Okay, so spontaneous lysis of the red thrombus so can happen, but it is going to take time. So it is a physiological phenomenon. Okay, something happened as a compensatory mechanism, body tries to lyse this thrombus, but it is going to time consuming. So we can't wait. By that time, so lots of muscle tissue is going to be damaged. So we need to appropriately tackle this red thrombus with a fibrinolytic or thrombolytic agents. Okay, so this is the broader division of acute coronary syndrome. As I already told, we have STEMI. So it is the necrosis of the myocytes with ST segment elevated MI, and we have a NSTEMI, which have included unstable angina where there is no death of the myocytes, no increase in the biomarkers and all. So, and we have proper STEMI where there is a death of the myocytes with an increase in the biomarkers, that is the cardiac enzymes and all. Okay. So why we need to worry about the STEMI? So obviously, when you see comparison of the mortality in relation to the timeline, whether it is a 30-day mortality, 90-day mortality, or 6 months mortality and all. So obviously the mortality is going to stand throughout this duration very high for the STEMI as compared to NSTEMI and that of the unstable angina. So it's very important to tackle this deadly entity and timely manner with some sort of reperfusion therapy. So how to diagnose? I will not go in depth. So chest pain, it may be dull, pressure-like or heaviness, squeezing type of the pain, sudden onset. Okay, so gradual or it may be persistent. Patient some atypical manifestation, dizziness, nausea, sweating. So ECG, ST elevation, so new onset of like LBBB, ST depression in V1, V2, different territories according to the vessel involved. So you have to remember in about like less than 20-25% of the patient, we might not get any like ECG findings at all. So we have to rely on the biomarkers like cardiac troponins and all. So basically, this is the timeline in terms of the evolution of acute myocardial infarction. So in relation to its severity, normal, hyperacute, acute, subacute, and that of the scarring. So like if it is going to be in terms of number of days to weeks, so then we are going to get the pathological Q waves. Okay. So within minutes, so we are going to have some sort of hyperacute T waves. So peak T waves, ST elevation and all. So basically, we need to understand the evolution of the acute myocardial infarction. It is very important, even in the post-therapy era also, to understand whether a ST elevation has been decreased by more than 50% along with the symptom relief. So this is the timeline in relation to evolution of the acute myocardial infarction. One more thing for diagnostic purpose we need to understand is the time related like cardiac enzyme release. So first thing which is going to come into the circulation is myoglobin, which is very non-specific. So then we have hand in hand, like in about 4 to 6 hours, CKMB and that of the troponin, whether it's a TROP-I or TROP-T. So troponins are going to remain elevated for up to 2 weeks, but CKMB, which will get disappeared in the next 48 to 72 hours. Okay. So we have cardiac specific troponins currently. So high sensitivity troponins and all, which gives more weightage, narrowing the diagnosis towards that of the acute coronary syndrome. Okay. So coming to the therapeutic option. So we have NSTEMI. So basically, so partial occluded coronaries are the reason which give rise to NSTEMI. There is a death of myocytes, release of the cardiac enzyme is going to happen. So thrombolysis is not benefit, because when you like give some sort of reperfusion therapy using thrombolytic agents like fibrinolytic agents, we need to weigh the risk and benefit. Okay. So why it is not indicated in a partially occluded? The risk of bleeding is going to surpass more than that of the benefits which we are going to get. So PCI, that is a percutaneous coronary intervention, beneficial, but may not be an emergent basis. So we have the risk stratification like, so Grace's score, TIMI 11B score and all, we can risk stratify and we can consider for the further coronary intervention. Okay. So patient with a documented NSTEMI acute coronary syndrome. So early risk of mortality is around 1 to 10%. So recurrent risk of acute coronary syndrome is going to 5 to 15%. We can't neglect this entity also, but not immediately jumping on some sort of pharmacological reperfusion therapy or like coronary intervention. We can take some time. So when it comes to STEMI, so that is the one which requires some sort of reperfusion therapy, either on an intervention based or on a pharmacological like therapeutic approach. We have the pharmacological agents, we call it as fibrinolytic agents, streptokinase, alteplase, riteplase, tenecteplase. We'll go in depth one by one. Okay. So when it comes to oral reperfusion therapy in STEMI patients, we have like percutaneous coronary intervention during the early hours of the STEMI, okay, which can be divided into primary PCI. So in India, it's very difficult to do this approach. So even in a tertiary care, quaternary care referral centers like our institute, Narayana also, so very hardly we do primary PCI and also less number of primary PCIs. So pharmaco-invasive therapy, so pharmacological perfusion followed by the percutaneous coronary intervention, rescue PCI. So if there is a failed pharmacological reperfusion therapy, so then they will be posted for rescue PCI. So where we exactly, okay, compulsory need a PCI. So where we have that superior approach of PCI as compared to thrombolysis is when there is a significant absolute contraindication for thrombolytic therapy. Okay, so I'll not go in depth into absolute contraindications and all. When a patient present with severe interval MI is having a cardiogenic shock, okay, so because of some mechanical problem or severe involvement of the muscle and all, severe heart failure, so hemodynamically significant ventricular arrhythmias, what we call it as malignant arrhythmias. So we have some additional indications for PCI on individual approach. So elderly patient, large anterior wall MI, so prior MI or prior CABG patient, high risk for the bleeding. So when we use the thrombolytic agent, so these are the additional indications on individual basis for the coronary intervention. Okay, so timing of reperfusion. So PCI door to balloon time should be less than 90 minutes. So fibrinolytic agent, so ideally door to needle time should be less than or equal to 30 minutes. Okay, so but we need an ideal fibrinolytic or thrombolytic agent which should act rapidly, high efficacy in terms of like opening up of the vessel at 60 minutes to 90 minutes, low incidence of adverse reaction, particularly bleeding or hemorrhagic stroke. So low risk for the re-occlusion. So easy to administer, simple and patient-tailored dosage regimen. So good long-term effect on the clinical outcome, and finally, which should be cost-effective. So we'll try to understand which is the ideal agent, okay, among the available fibrinolytic agents. Okay, so this is the classification of thrombolytics. We have a first generation urokinase, streptokinase. Okay, they are non-fibrin specific. So then we have a second generation. We have some sort of recombinant like tissue plasminogen activator, that is a alteplase. Third generation, we have tenecteplase, riteplase, which are available. We have other agents like monteplase, lanoteplase, okay, palmiteplase, which are currently not available. So basically, first generation are non-fibrin specific, second generation, third generation are fibrin specific. Okay, so tenecteplase, a little bit on its description, is a tissue plasminogen activator developed from modification of natural human tissue plasminogen activator complementary DNA. Okay, so there are some amino acid mismatch is going to happen to develop this tenecteplase in particular positions and all. They removed some amino acid, they substituted some amino acid to get this tissue plasminogen activator, that is the tenecteplase, is a fibrin specific plasminogen activator produced in a Chinese hamster ovary cell line by recombinant DNA technology. So we are not bothered about what exactly happened in terms of the amino acid replacement and all, but it is a like developed molecule based on the recombinant DNA technology. So when it comes to posology, so treatment with tenecteplase should be initiated as soon as possible after the onset of the symptoms which fit into STEMI. So tenecteplase should be administered on the basis of body weight. Okay, so with a maximum dosage of 10,000 units or 50 milligram of tenecteplase. And it is very important to choose the appropriate volume of the dilution according to the recommendation. So it's a weight-based therapy. So less than 60 kg, so 30 milligram, 6 ml is the volume. So like 60 to 70 kg, 35 milligram, 70 to 80 kg, 40 milligram, 80 to 90 kg, 45 milligram, maximum more than 90 kg, the dosage is going to be around 50 milligram with the total reconstituted volume. So it's going to be around 10 ml. So this is the posology in terms of the dose selection in relation to weight. Hello. Hello. Poonam, you have to mute, I think. So this is the like dosage of tenecteplase with that of the volume indicated for diluting it. So when we compare, so all these so-called second and third generation like fibrinolytics and all, so alteplase, so and riteplase, tenecteplase, none of them are having any immunogenicity like that of the streptokinase and urokinase. No chance of anaphylaxis and all. So plasminogen activation, they are direct activators of the tissue plasminogen. So fibrin specificity is going to be more for the tenecteplase as compared to alteplase and riteplase. Riteplase is the lowest fibrin specific. Plasma half-life is going to be around 20 minutes, which is more as compared to alteplase and riteplase for tenecteplase. Dosage, okay, so 15 milligram bolus plus like 90-minute infusion up to 85 milligram. So overall, we are going to give alteplase as an infusion for about 1.5 hours, 90 minutes. Okay. So next we have riteplase. So one bolus, we have to give 10 units followed by another 10 units of the bolus, 30 minutes support. So each bolus we need to give over a period of 2 minutes. But if you see the tenecteplase, hardly 10 seconds, we can just give the bolus according to the dose requirement, according to the weight of the patient. So the resistance to the plasminogen activator inhibitor. So this plasminogen activator inhibitor is going to reduce the activity of this fibrinolytic agents that is going to be very resistant to the tenecteplase. Means tenecteplase. So this plasminogen activator inhibitor is not going to act and inhibit the action of the tenecteplase. So as compared to that of the alteplase and that of the reteplase. Okay. So again, if you see the patency rate, so I already told which is more fibrin specific and with a good prolonged half-life, that is the tenecteplase as compared to that of the like first generation like fibrinolytic agent, that is streptokinase, or alteplase, which is a second generation agent. But when you see the patency rate, like opening up of the coronary artery rate, which is going to be very good and more for the tenecteplase as compared to streptokinase, reteplase, or that of the alteplase. Okay. So this is the administration comparison. So in a 10 seconds, the appropriate calculated dosage we can give for tenecteplase, reteplase, I told, so 2 minutes, one dosage, another 2 minutes, one dosage with the interval of 30 minutes. Alteplase, so 15 milligram bolus over few minutes, maybe 2 to 5 minutes. So then we'll give over a period of another 90 minutes as an remaining amount, that is around 85 milligram of the maximum. So streptokinase, we give like desired dosage over a period of 60 minutes. Okay. So this is the dosage schedule. Like if you see alteplase, 15 milligram bolus followed by 0.75 milligram per kg for 30 minutes, maximum of 50 milligram, and then 0.5 milligram. Okay. So per kg, that is maximum of 35 milligram over next 60 minutes. 60 plus 30, 90 minutes we are going to give. Reteplase, so 30 minutes apart, 2 dosage. Okay. So tenecteplase, we are going to give over a period of like 5 to 10 seconds of the desired dosage based on the weight. So here 15 lakh units of IV streptokinase, we are going to give it as an infusion over 30 to 60 minutes. So this is the dose and the duration which is required. So obviously lesser, ultra less duration of infusion, which is almost nothing, that is around 10 seconds for the tenecteplase. Okay. So when it comes to fibrin specificity, you have to remember all these fibrin specific agents. So reteplase, tenecteplase, alteplase, they act on only the plasminogen, which is fibrin bound. So they are not going to act on the free plasminogen, which is available in the plasma and all. So that's why they are going to have a less chance of bleeding manifestation. If you see non-fibrin specific, so they act on the free plasminogen in the circulation. Along with that, they are going to act on the fibrin bound plasminogen on the surface of the thrombus. So they have an impact on the fibrinogen. So activation by the thrombin to fibrin and fibrin degradation products. Okay. So this is very, very important because as I told, so fibrin specific, they act only on the plasminogen or the plasmin, which is fibrin or thrombin bound. So not on the like freely available plasminogen. So fibrin specific plasminogen activators activate mainly plasminogen bound to clot surface and have less effect on the circulating plasminogen. Okay. So because of that, so we have a less chance of bleeding. So you have to remember, so non-fibrin specific plasminogen activators, so they act on the like free available plasminogen. So, okay, so non-fibrin specific or less fibrin specific plasminogen activator, so they act which is freely available and which is also like thrombin or fibrin bound. So which activates both plasminogen bound to clot surface and circulating plasminogen in blood, leading to extensive systemic plasminogen activation with the degradation of other non-specific plasma proteins, including fibrinogen, factor 5, factor 8 also. So this is the comparison between the like newer generation fibrin specific thrombolytic agents versus that of the old non-fibrin specific thrombolytic agents, particularly urokinase and streptokinase. So degrade fibrin clots as well as fibrinogen and other plasma protein, degrade mainly fibrin clots. Okay. So they activate plasminogen bound to clot surface and circulating plasminogen in the systemic circulation, activate mainly plasminogen bound to clot surface, that is a fibrin specific. So less selective in action, more selective, extensive systemic plasminogen activation, less systemic involvement. So more risk of bleeding, less risk of the bleeding. Okay. So if you see some recommendation across the globe, we have like European Society AHA, American Heart Association, so American like Committee of the Cardiology recommendation and all. So STEMI guidelines state that acute myocardial ischemia, so less than 12 hours, should be treated with a reperfusion therapy. Okay, so primary PCI is the gold standard, somewhere less than or equal to 120 minutes. Where this is not possible, fibrinolysis should be performed with a fibrin specific agent. So nutshell, definitely there is an like very good guidelines to suggest go for the fibrin specific agent like tenecteplase, alteplase, riteplase as soon as possible within 10 minutes of STEMI. Upper limit is less than 12 hours, preferably in the pre-hospital, but that is not possible in Indian scenario. Alongside adjunctive antiplatelet anticoagulant therapies, and patient should be transferred to the PCI capable center. So once you started on the fibrinolytic therapy, again, this is the STEMI European Cardiology Society 2017 guidelines. So they recommend strongly on using the fibrin specific like thrombolytic agents, riteplase, tenecteplase, and that of the alteplase. What is the clinical evidence for the utility of tenecteplase in the globe and in Indian scenario? So this is one review on thrombolytic therapy used in myocardial infarction. So when we compare tenecteplase versus streptokinase, okay, so basically we don't require any evidence at all. So we have like lots of adverse effect, anaphylaxis, bleeding risk with that of the streptokinase. So this is one review article which clearly suggests so streptokinase may produce more bleeding complication and less resolution of ST segment when compared to tissue plasminogen activator such as tenecteplase. Okay, so no doubt, so tenecteplase is having a good data in terms of like comparison with the streptokinase in terms of achieving the outcome benefit along with the like reduction in that of the major bleeding complications and also this is the data from that of Indian origin. So again, tenecteplase Indian experience. So pharmacologic reperfusion therapy with an indigenous tenecteplase in about 15,222 patients. Very huge data with STEMI, the Indian registry data. This is again, which got published in Indian Heart Journal in 2013. So the end point assessed was successful thrombolysis and the incidence of bleeding. One is the benefit outcome, one is the adverse effect. Okay, so these are the basic demographic characteristics. So near about 60% of the patients were hypertensive, so around 40% were diabetic, so hyperlipidemics around 23%, smokers, multiple comorbidities were involved in this registry data analysis. If you see the successful thrombolysis as a subgroup analysis, so it's almost more than 85 to 90% across all categories of the comorbid conditions. So male, female, sex in relation to the timeline also. So if you see, so overall success rate is around 95%. Again, less than 3 hours thrombolysis, 3 to 6 hours or more than 6 hours. Even though more than 6 hours is a bit less, it is around 85%. But if you are going to thrombolyze less than 6 hours, whether it is less than 3 hours or 3 to 6 hours for STEMI patients using the tenecteplase, so successful is almost more than 95%. Again, so in different comorbid condition, whether a patient is elderly, non-elderly, diabetic, non-diabetic, male, female, it is almost more than 90% clinical success rate when used tenecteplase for thrombolyting the patients with the STEMI. Okay, so safety of tenecteplase. So none of the like major or minor adverse effect were statistically significant in the tenecteplase subgroup. So like bleeding, excluding intracerebral hemorrhage, stroke without intracerebral hemorrhage, or maybe intracerebral hemorrhage, or MI recurrence, reinfarction, heart failure, ventricular tachycardia. So none of them in relation to different comorbid condition, male, female, age categorization. So there was no statistically significance. Okay, so again, adverse events according to age group, gender, and diabetes status, which was also not significant in terms of different like adverse effect, whether it is a hemorrhage related stroke or non-hemorrhage related stroke, recurrence, heart failure, ventricular tachyarrhythmias, and overall mortality also. In conclusion, the study conclusively established the safety and efficacy of indigenous tenecteplase in Indian STEMI patients, including high-risk subgroup. High risk are those who had like some sort of the comorbid condition. So the study reconfirmed the importance of early thrombolysis for better success rate and the clinical outcome, especially in Indian scenario where reaching PCI center may not be immediately possible. Okay, so they need to go for tier 3 centers and all, metro cities and all, which may not be possible always. So to get the accessibility to percutaneous coronary intervention. So this is one more data on tenecteplase. So near about around 7,700 patients has been involved with the ST segment elevated MI. So pharmacological reperfusion therapy with tenecteplase. So again, it's a multicentric observational prescription event monitoring data. So somewhere between 2011 and that of the 2016, so including around 7,668 patients. Okay, if you see efficacy of tenecteplase in STEMI, so overall, so it is around 93%, less than 3 hours 94%, 3 to 6 hours up to 88 to 90%, more than 6 hours it is around 85%. Okay, so if you see the resolution of chest pain and 50% reduction in the ST elevation, which is again more than 50%, more than 90% in terms of the symptom resolution and ST segment normalization, means decrease in the ST segment to resolution at 90 minutes is going to be more than 90% in the like tenecteplase group. So safety, any bleeding excluding stroke occurred in about 1.7% of the patient. Any stroke without intracerebral bleed, 0.18%. Any intracerebral bleed in 0.38% of the patients. Okay, so angiography was performed in about 16% of the patient. So while about 5.3% of the patients underwent PTCA, around 2.4% of the patient needed CABG. This is the post thrombolysis with the tenecteplase. The findings reinforce the safety and efficacy of tenecteplase in Indian STEMI patients, in patients with the comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, and dyslipidemia. So again, reconfirm the importance of early thrombolysis, particularly in Indian scenario where reaching a PCI center is going to be impossible on immediate basis. Okay, so this is one more data comparing tenecteplase versus alteplase. Okay, so safety and efficacy of tenecteplase versus alteplase in acute coronary syndrome, the systematic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trial. This is the data which got published in 2016. So they compared as a primary endpoint of risk of major bleeding, secondary endpoint like intracranial bleeding, so vessel recanalization, and 30-day mortality. Okay, so these were the different studies included with a different dosage schedule of tissue plasminogen activator, that is the alteplase and that of the tenecteplase. Okay, so like data from 1999 to 2009 has been included. If you see major and intracranial hemorrhage, so statistically significant reduction in the risk of major bleeding compared to alteplase. So that was statistically significant, but similar risk of intracranial bleed. So overall major bleeding definitely was statistically less in the tenecteplase as compared to that of the alteplase, but there was a similar incidence of bleeding in relation to intracerebral hemorrhage. So with comparison of the alteplase, 30-day mortality, tenecteplase was associated with a similar risk of 30-day mortality. So it is comparable with that of the alteplase with a reduction in that of the bleeding. So the available evidence suggests that weight adjusted tenecteplase is superior to weight adjusted alteplase in terms of safety, because major bleeding, so definitely significantly less in the tenecteplase with a lower risk of the major bleeding, even though intracerebral bleed and the mortality are comparable between tenecteplase and that of the like alteplase. A little bit on the utility of tenecteplase in stroke patient. This is the Extend IA tenecteplase trial which got published in NEJM in 2018. Tenecteplase versus alteplase before thrombectomy for ischemic stroke. Okay, so NIHS score was favorable. It's around 2 in patients with the tenecteplase before mechanical thrombectomy as compared to 3 in the alteplase group. So basically there is a data that is Extended IA tenecteplase trial, so which suggests tenecteplase versus alteplase before endovascular therapy for ischemic stroke found significantly higher rates of recanalization with a tenecteplase of 0.25 milligram per kg at first angiography run in around 202 pre-thrombectomy patient with a M1 like MCA territory occlusion, favorable perfusion profile, which translated into better 90-day disability outcome. Okay, so this is one editorial which very recently published in Stroke 2021 journal. Should tenecteplase replace alteplase for acute thrombolysis, particularly in stroke? So we have enough data in acute coronary syndrome, but in the stroke we have 2 trials like Extend IA TNK trial and NOR test trial. So this also suggests favoring the data towards that of the tenecteplase, but they have not concluded. Okay, we have to entirely replace alteplase with that of the tenecteplase. We need to wait for ongoing trial like Timeless. So TEMPO 2, TASTE trial, and TWIST trial. Okay, so these are the 4 major ongoing trials comparing tenecteplase with that of the alteplase, but there is some hint. So tenecteplase is favoring in terms of choosing an agent for thrombolysis in stroke patients also. Again, tenecteplase versus riteplase. Okay, so in acute myocardial infarction, this is the network meta-analysis of RCTs, which got published in in 2019. So indirect comparison suggests similar efficacy and safety of tenecteplase and riteplase. So huge data, they included around 49,000 and 875 patients has been included in this meta-analysis. So they concluded, okay, so 2 medicines, they have their own advantage, disadvantage, but in terms of like major bleeding or that of the mortality outcome, there is no major difference between the tenecteplase and riteplase. But when we see its half-life, okay, so less resistance to that of the plasminogen activator inhibitor, and the feasibility of like injection infusion. Riteplase also, I told we need to give 2 doses 30 minutes apart. So tenecteplase is just a 10-second dosage. So that makes more favoring towards the tenecteplase. To conclude, so tenecteplase, which can be administered more rapidly than alteplase before thrombectomy in patients with ischemic stroke. Overall functional outcome was better with tenecteplase than with alteplase. In the ordinal scale of Rankin's scale score was no significant difference in the incidence of cerebral hemorrhage. This is the like initial trial which I quoted. So this is the trial conclusion, that is the Extend IA TNK trial. Okay, so basically take home message on the tenecteplase. So it is very favorable in terms of the single bolus dosage, long off-life around 24 minutes, high fibrin specificity, less bleeding risk, so high resistance to plasminogen activator inhibitor. So then, this plasminogen activator inhibitor is not going to decrease the action of the tenecteplase. So tenecteplase should be considered as a therapeutic option, so especially in Indian setting where we have a problem in reaching the PCA facility and timely manner. So thank you.
Hello. Yeah, so thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful insights on tenecteplase, which you have shared. So now the forum is open for all the delegates. If you have any questions or queries related to thrombolysis and STEMI, so you can put forward and we can have a discussion with sir regarding this. So forum is open for the discussion. So can we have a gallery view? So it will be better so that we are able to see the, so if you can we stop share the screen also?
Yeah. So I stopped it.
So today we have with us all the doctors from different hospitals from Bangalore.
Yeah.
And Mangalore and also from Bijapur. So if you all have any queries or any discussion point, please, forum is open. Anything from Dr. Mahesh, sir? Anything from your end? Or Dr. Ravi? Dr. Prasad, any query from your end?
I just have a query to Poonam. So it's made available from your company already?
Yes, sir. It is already available in the market, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, all the pharmacies are attached to the hospital. It is available. So I'll just check with Manoj, our field people, whether it's there in Narani. So now the pack is already available. Anything from your end, sir? Doctors, Dr. Don, Dr. Anand Sutta, sir? Anything from Dr. Priya Nayak? I think most of the things were so clear in the presentation.
Hello.
So no questions. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, Dr. Anand, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Harish, is a wonderful presentation. You covered in almost entire gamut of the molecule in various aspects of usage. Of course, you have elicited many points, many articles also, where all it can be used and how best it has shown the results when compared to the existing molecule. It was a wonderful presentation. Not much to ask anyway.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, anything from any other? Dr. Aravind or Dr. Venkatesh? Dr. Magesh? I think all the queries were already solved in this presentation itself, so there are no questions which have come up.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no questions, then we can end the session. So I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Harish Malapura sir for this wonderful, insightful presentation on the use of tenecteplase in STEMI patients. So it was really very, very simplified way. You have covered all the points. So thank you for your valuable time you have shared with us and also with all the delegates to give the insights on the topic. And I also thank all the delegates who have attended this. And I am sure this really would have helped you. So thank you very much for your valuable time on the weekend. So have a nice day. So thank you all delegates.
Thank you. Thank you all. Stay safe.
So yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Can I end the session?
Yes, sir.